I and the group of monks who have come with me are glad to be here amongst fellow companions in the holy life who have Ajahn Dhammo as the head of the group here at Wat Nana Chat. Ajahn Dhammo and I are friends in the practice. We practiced together with Ajahn Chah in the old days, and it's an opportunity for myself now to meet all of you, my companions and friends in the Dhamma. All of you have faith in the practice and in the development of the citta. Those who have interest in developing knowledge and wisdom in the Dhamma and the teachings of the Buddha's path and his path of practice as taught by Ajahn Chah, so that we can develop both understanding, comprehension and a clear knowledge of the path. Today I want to open up the opportunity for a conversation so I can maybe convey some experience and some of my own knowledge and understanding of the path to you. And so I see this as an opportunity because many of you have experience in practice, as an opportunity for exchange of ideas, conversation and the answering of questions. And I will try to convey any understanding and knowledge I have to all my friends and companions here who have a deep faith and conviction in the practice of Buddhism. So anyone got a question they wish to ask about your meditation practice or anything in general? Just to translate the question was, could Tanajan please explain the difference between wisdom, developing samadhi and concentration, and the other form of practice of samadhi, developing wisdom, and how do you use them and how do they go together? The question of whether developing wisdom, which leads to the development of samadhi, or the other aspect of the question of samadhi and developing the mind so it leads to wisdom, those two questions have to be, two aspects of the question have to be broken up and answered separately. The first one is that one has to be aware of one's temperament and character. If you're one that likes to think, likes to investigate, likes to contemplate and reflect, then we can find that if we say look at a sutta, contemplate the body, or do a mantra like Buddho, and we find that our mind continuously gets caught in thinking and speculation, then we should try to develop investigation or contemplation, so that we're using the wisdom aspect to train the mind to peace and tranquility. For example, we use the contemplation of death or maranasati. We reflect on our own death and the death of others and death of other beings. And by doing so, we are able to see that all beings die and must die, that we too will die. And because of this reflection and contemplation, by using the wisdom aspect, we're developing the sati and mindfulness and recollection of death, then that it inclines the mind towards peace and tranquility. And so this is the wisdom aspect leads to the stilling of the mind and the tranquility of the mind. So if we are developing the mind, we're able to contemplate the mind in the opposite, in development of samadhi. If we're able to take up a meditation object, for example, develop sati of Buddho, Dhammo or Sangho, and at that time there's a sense of gladness and sense of delight and joy in the object, and piti sukha arises, rapture and happiness, and then that mind is then well established without thinking and distraction, then that particular type of person finds it very easy to develop samadhi. Their mind is well established in one object and on one object. The mind becomes focused and one-pointed on that object, and that citta becomes peaceful and still. This sort of person, after they've stilled their mind, developed samadhi, then they need to develop investigation. They have to develop the investigation and contemplation, for example, of the five aspects of the body, kesa, loma, naka, danta, tacho, the aspects of the body, the non-beautiful aspects, or the four elements, the earth, air, fire, and water element. Or you may develop the investigation of the three characteristics. One sees that things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. And if one investigates that very clearly, then after one has been into samadhi, then this is the way to develop wisdom. This is the way the citta, which is concentrated and calm, leads to development of wisdom and understanding. This is for the second person. So the first person who likes to think and contemplate develops the investigation aspect, and that leads to the stilling of the mind. The second person who has a natural ability to develop a gladness and happiness on one object, they develop samadhi. Then they must develop the investigation and contemplation of characteristics so that wisdom arises as well. So to go back to the first characteristic, the first person, the person whose mind tends to investigation and contemplation, to thinking a lot. If you like to think a lot, then you may use and contemplate the moods and emotions that arise. Be aware of what arises in the mind. When the eyes see something, the ear hears something, taste and touch and smell, then we contemplate these things as they arise at the sense doors. We have to contemplate the three characteristics, see the things that arise at the sense doors, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and bodily contact and mental contact, as all impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. And when we see that, then we see also our moods and emotions, our delights, our sufferings, and our happiness, the moods of the mind. They also are subject to the three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And when we see that very clearly, this leads to wisdom. So when we see that things are changing, things are dukkha, and things are not self, then we develop an understanding. And that wisdom, that aspect where we're developing contemplation of the things that arise in our experience as impermanent unsatisfaction, not self, leads to peace. It leads to the mind becoming calm. And in that way it leads to khantika samadhi, this momentary concentration of the mind, where the mind calms down and becomes still. And this momentary concentration, then if that is developed, then that can lead to upacara samadhi, where the mind becomes even more long-lasting in that peace and tranquility, well established. And when we're established in upacara samadhi, then that will lead to clarity, the development and the rising of clarity, becoming sharper and more precise. The second aspect of the path, as we said, where one develops samadhi leading to wisdom, this comes together from the first aspect of the path, where panya leads to samadhi. These two aspects of the path work together and support each other. Samadhi leads to panya, and panya will lead to samadhi. They work together and they support each other. So that if we find that we want to develop tranquility through investigation, using the wisdom aspect to develop tranquility, we have to do it frequently and often. Contemplate often. Do it over and over again, continuously. If we're developing this practice, then we have to be aware of our moods and emotions, aware of our happiness and sorrows, and contemplate by developing wisdom, seeing their impermanent nature, their unsatisfactoriness, and their not self. The aspect of developing samadhi to lead to wisdom, for this person, that person holds one aromana, holds one state of mind, one object in their mind for a long period of time, and they arise a sense of delight and happiness by holding that one object of contemplation in their mind for a long period of time. And by doing that, their mind becomes peaceful and calm. But then they have to investigate, as I said, they have to investigate after coming out of that state, investigate objects according to the three characteristics. So in summary, both these paths of wisdom developing samadhi and samadhi developing wisdom really come together in the ultimate sense. They come together in sila, samadhi and panya, in virtue, concentration and wisdom. And we become aware that these qualities have to be developed frequently and often. For development of concentration, we have to do it very frequently. The development of wisdom, we have to do it frequently. We do it until the mind becomes focused and one-pointed. And with development of samadhi, the power of the samadhi is what suppresses defilements temporarily. It suppresses the kilesas temporarily, just through that power of one-pointedness and the strength of the mind. So we have to look at our own temperament. We have to look at our own abilities, our own strengths and our own weaknesses, and see which path is more convenient for us. If we're a person who likes to think a lot, and we find that every time we sit and our mind is in speculative thought and distractive thought and thinking, then we may need to develop this wisdom aspect, contemplating a lot, investigating a lot according to the three characteristics, so that wisdom develops concentration. If we're a person who can hold one object in our mind for a long period of time and develop a delight and happiness in that object, then we can develop samadhi, which develops wisdom. But ultimately, both paths conjunct and unify together in sila and samadhi and panya. I asked Ajahn to say something about drowsiness and sloth and torpor, and how to overcome sloth and torpor. And he said that there is various causes for sloth and torpor. Obviously, one of them is when the physical body has not had enough rest, and the physical body is tired, and that is one cause, obviously. Another cause is that when the mind starts to settle down and become peaceful, if this mindfulness is not strong enough, then one can slip into drowsiness, because mindfulness is broken. The continuity of mindfulness is broken. So this has happened to me. Before, when I was practicing, when the mind would get peaceful and the mind was very bright and clear, but outwardly I appeared to others to be drowsy. The body was slumped, but I realized that my mindfulness was clear and bright and continuous. And so there is that quality too, where sometimes, not in all cases, but in some cases, some people may look from the outside as appear like you're drowsy, but actually the mind is very much in peace and the mindfulness is continuous. In my case, what I did was to prove to myself whether I was mindful and aware, is I would play a tape of Ajahn Chah's, and then get my friends, my companions, to turn the tape off, and then I would tell them exactly where Ajahn Chah had got to in the Dhamma talk, and just to prove to myself whether I was actually drowsy or not, or I was clear. And so that's one way of testing. You've got to test to see and question whether you really are drowsy. There is one way where obviously the body does not have enough rest, and therefore the mindfulness is weak. That's out of a need from the body. There is the other type of drowsiness where when the citta, the mindfulness, becomes more peaceful, the mind is settling down and going into samadhi, and it's becoming more and more still and tranquil, then the hindrances are overcome. There's no sensual desire, there's no ill will, there's no doubt, and there's no restlessness. But as the mind settles down on the object of meditation, then a dullness, a subtle dullness, sleeps in, and slips in. And that's because the mindfulness is too weak in the meditation. We need to develop stronger mindfulness. And so this we need to develop through a lot of practice, the practice of developing mindfulness. And I've written something here that I can't read. So, the other quality is when we get drowsy through just too much sleep, where we're sleeping during the day too much, 2 hours a day, or we're eating too much, and therefore we're oversleeping. And even though we've slept a lot, the mind is even more duller and more drowsy and less alert than if one goes without sleep. So that's, again, you have to be very careful, is to sleep little, but sleep enough, and to eat what is just the right amount, not eating too much, so that you're not trying to find pleasure in sleep. The mind has to have the attitude of not looking for pleasure or happiness and delight in sleep, but looking for happiness and delight in wakefulness, developing a state of mind like that. So when you go to sleep, before you go to sleep, contemplate the body from the head down to the toes. Take the body apart in all its component parts. So you're establishing mindfulness before going to sleep. And then work up from the toes back to the crown of the head, taking the body apart. If Ajahn Chah used to recommend, if someone was overcome with drowsiness when they're asleep at a sitting meditation, then they should get up, not to continue sitting. If you're overcome with drowsiness, to walk backwards, he would suggest, or go and sit in a secluded and fearful sort of place, in a place where you're by yourself, in a place which would bring up anxiety or even fear, so that you're going against the tendency of being familiar with your environment. Because when we're very familiar with our environment, like our huts and the place that we feel relaxed in and comfortable with, then it's very easy to be drawn to the attraction of the sleeping mat. Whereas if we're in a place which we're not familiar with, which is unusual or out of the ordinary, then mindfulness tends to be a bit more sharper and a bit more alert. So come away from your kuti and come out to a public place, to the sala, or to a place where it is open or public, or a place which is more inspiring of fear, and that way that will make the mind alert. So if you're getting drowsy, then you need to seek some advice as well. Ask your friends to tell you if you're sitting and you're drowsing all the time. Get them to point it out. Get them to say, "Hang on, you're falling asleep." Get them to give advice, because sometimes we're falling asleep and we're totally unaware of it, or we're falling asleep in situations where we're unaware of it. So get your friends to say, please point out to me when I'm nodding and when I'm drowsy. So that they're helping you out to make the mind bright, the chitta alert and awake. If you're sleeping and falling asleep too much, then do a lot of walking meditation. We have to go against, and this word toraman, to go against, to torment or go against our natural tendencies for drowsiness. So when you're walking and you're feeling a bit tired, don't use that attachment to that tiredness, that feeling of tiredness, just as an excuse to go and sleep. Go against that tendency, go against the inclination to be drowsy. Of course, when we're watching the breath as a meditation object, then it's very easy for the mind, when it does settle down and it starts to become peaceful, for the mindfulness to slip as the mind settles down. And so we have to have great mindfulness to follow the citta, so that when it gets peaceful. We should remember that practice is in the four postures of standing, walking, and sitting and lying down. is not, we're not just doing the physical postures. If we're standing and walking meditation or sitting meditation, that may not be meditation. Just because we're in that posture of meditation, the physical posture of meditation, it may not yet be meditation. Meditation is really the practice of the mind and the development of the mind. So we have to develop the mind so that we're practicing inwardly, not just doing the outer formalities and the outer postures of meditation. And the way we overcome and do practice of the mind and cultivation of the mind is the development of the qualities which overcome the five hindrances, suppress the five hindrances. And we may need to do the development of a supagamathan. If you're falling asleep a lot, then don't watch the breath. Develop a supagamathan. Contemplate the body, pull the body apart, give work to the mind to do, so that the mind doesn't fall into sleep and indulge in sleep. So you're giving it work to do. I had problems when I was originally practicing with this. Sometimes I would have had enough food and enough sleep, but when the mind was settling down into tranquility, the body was getting very calm, the hindrances were overcoming, except for this last one of drowsiness. Sati was getting broken as the mind got very, very subtle and the mind got very relaxed on the object of meditation, and because of that the mind would go into drowsiness. And so when that was pointed out, then I would develop the clarity and refinement of sati. So the one way of doing that is sometimes I would, if I stayed up and practiced really late into the night, and I was practicing very hard, sometimes all through the night, and I still found myself getting drowsy, I would take a board and go and take that board and put it on the top of the well and sit on the edge of the well, so that the mind would become awake and bright. Sometimes in the morning, if staying up all night meditating, by 6:30 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning, I was still drowsy and sleepy, and I knew I had to go on an invitation into the house with the teacher. So to overcome the drowsiness, I would make the mind anxious by taking a board and sitting on the edge of the well, and then this fear of falling into the well would make the mind bright or alert. Or sometimes I would go up into the bell tower of Wat Pah Pong and sit right on the edge of the bell tower at the top of Wat Pah Pong to make the mind bright and clear and wake it up. But if you notice that you do something like this and the body is even still sleepy, then it's obviously time to give up and rest. The body is just too tired. If you put it in a situation which endangers it, and you're still falling asleep and it feels like you're going to actually fall off, then obviously you need to rest the body. You need to find a method for overcoming drowsiness. You need to train the mind and find skillful means, so that we find ways and techniques which are skillful and useful for training our mind, so that we can develop these higher states of Dhamma. You all heard the question, so the response was that when we have this opportunity or this occasion where we find ourselves in a community and we have responsibilities, whether it's the abbot or the vice abbot or the monks who take on various responsibilities in assisting the running of the monastery, then the most important quality to develop is the four Brahmaviharas. And when we develop the four Brahmaviharas, particularly the quality of metta, the quality of the willing to be kind and helpful to the group and wanting to assist the group. This is a quality of self-sacrifice, the giving up of selfish notions and self-concern for the well-being, for the purpose of the group, the community, so that one is doing things on behalf of the community and for the well-being of the community, for the benefit of the community. But when we have this quality of metta for doing things and sacrificing our own desires and likes for the well-being and for the benefit of others in the community, we shouldn't also give up our own meditation. We should continue to develop our mindfulness and clear comprehension, to be aware of our physical body and be aware of our moods, to be aware of the mind. So when we're helping and doing acts of service, then also we continue to develop our meditation when we have the opportunity. So when there's a time that you're free, then do sitting and walking meditation, so that you overcome and resolve moods and feelings that come up to the sort of activities and the responsibilities and the problems that arise in looking after a community. And one of the most important things that we have to resolve in our moods and feelings is to overcome the perception of finding fault in others. So looking at others with negativity and the fault-finding mind, so that we're not looking down on others or criticizing others and finding fault in others. Because all of us are of different characters and different qualities, and we have different temperaments. And so it's important to have that as an understanding, as a foundation, that we're not all the same. When I was at Wapapong, Ajahn Chah would establish a rabi-up, a routine and a schedule, and I would want that rabi-up myself. I would want that rabi-up and routine and schedule to be kept very strictly and very with a lot of kind of purpose and energy by the rest of the community. And Ajahn Chah used to warn me and warn the other monks to be very careful not to be caught in the net of self. And I wondered what he meant by that, to be careful not to be caught in the net of self. Because I was very keen and sincere in wanting to do everything in the best possible way, and for the routine and schedule of the monastery to be impeccable and to be held very strictly. But we have to realize that there are great degrees and diversities of characters and temperaments. Some people keep the routine and the schedule and the rules of the monastery very loosely. Other people keep it mildly. Other people keep it very strictly. And if we just focus on others and what they're doing and what they are practicing, then we forget ourselves, and our mind will not be empty, our mind will not be free, because we're finding fault with others. So we have to be careful how we're looking, because at others, how we're looking down, whether we're looking down on others, and how we're looking towards others, whether we're looking towards them with kindness and goodwill, and just the wisdom to know the diversification of temperament, the diversification of opinions, and the diversification of views. And we have to be very careful not to attach to our views and to let go of our opinions, so that we're not caught in our own views and opinions. Otherwise we'll be like Ajahn Chah says, we won't be careful and we'll get caught in the net of self, the net of self-views. So we need to develop our mindfulness and wisdom to be watchful of our moods and emotions. Sometimes when we're in a community, we get frustrated, or we want to leave the community, want to seek seclusion and solitude. But we should reflect, at this time we're living in the community, the here and now we're actually with the community. And so we should make our minds excuse me, establish our minds. At this point we're in the community, so I'll try to do my duties as best as possible and as fully as possible and as totally committed as possible, so that it is complete, full and perfect in every way. So I'm actually giving up for the benefit of my friends and companions in the holy life, and giving up to these other people. And that develops a sense of gladness in the mind, a sense of delight and a sense of joy. And that gladness and joy and happiness and delight makes one overcome the sense of the difficulty and the problem. It becomes much less, because one has this sense of giving and service to others. The other extremely important quality which I would like to mention, which is important when living in a community, is to be giving forgiveness to each other continuously and at all times, to be having an attitude of forgiving your fellow companions for the mistakes or the transgressions that they've made towards you, or your perceptions of their transgressions. Because when we have this attitude of forgiveness, then that leads to happiness and peace in a community. In a community like this, there is innumerable and various opinions, views and ideas on the ways things should be done. This nanajitang, the variety and diversification of opinions and views, and each person has them. But by realizing that with wisdom, then we can know that other people may not think exactly like ourselves, and we can have a sense of wisdom about that, and then we can be happy, not to get caught in our happiness and our sorrow and our delights and our sadness. We develop this wisdom and understanding of knowing the Buddha's path, and we use this life together in the community to its full benefit and its full potential. Yes. You have to speak up. Sort of. I'll try and translate some of that, and maybe the gist of that. Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear.
All right. It was rather rational before, but this is dry rational Buddhism. And then now he's got this experience of hearing ghosts, and so the whole thing has changed.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that bit. I didn't hear that bit. When we have done a lot of study, and we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding and information, whether it's about Mahayana Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism, we see that basically the teachings of both these traditions have their highest focal point, or their highest emphasis on the destruction of greed, hatred and delusion, with their end result focused on the ending of all suffering, the seeing of all conditions as impermanent, unsatisfactory and not self, and so that the purpose of the Buddha's teachings, whether it's Mahayana or Theravada, is the ending of all suffering, whether small suffering or great suffering, small happiness or great unhappiness. And so we see that we can know and see for ourselves that this is a scientific method, because science uses cause and effect and puts things through an experimental test to see whether they uphold to cause and effect. What with this cause, what is the effect? What with this cause is the consequence? And so in Buddhism, we're using the same technique of scientific method, our experience and experiment with the scientific method to see the cause and effect of things. What with this technique leads to what consequences. And we can see that we can apply the methodology of science to the arising of suffering. When suffering arises, what is its cause? Where does it come from? We see that it arises through craving, through clinging, through attachment. We're going to apply the scientific method to our fear. When fear arises, whatever that fear arises, whatever the cause of the fear, we can see the nature of fear and say, where is that arising from? And we see it in terms of the scientific method of what's its cause, where does it come from? And we see that its cause comes from attachment to the five khandhas, attachment to this body, attachment to this mind, the fear of death of the body, fear of the breaking up of the mind. This leads to upadana. This upadana, this attachment to the five khandhas, then leads to fear when we feel that the five khandhas are challenged in some way. And so what we're really afraid of is not afraid of other beings, but afraid of death. That's what we're really afraid of. And we're afraid of death because of our love of life and love of self, our attachment to life and our attachment to self. And it is that what you're really afraid of. So what we're doing is practicing to let go of feeling, let go of being afraid. We're practicing to let go of thoughts. We're practicing to let go of feelings. We're practicing to let go of this attachment to the five khandhas. So you shouldn't believe this. You only know it through practice. I'm not asking you to believe this. I'm asking you to practice according to cause and effect, using the scientific method to see what's the cause of your suffering. And this scientific method is just this path of sila, samadhi and panya. And so just as all science likes to focus on cause and effect, Buddhism also focuses on cause and effect. So even though you may have studied and all the religions of the world, the most important religion for you to study is the craving and clinging in your heart, which leads to being afraid. The craving and clinging in your heart, which leads to greed, hatred and delusion. That's the religion which you really need to study. And when you understand that, when you know that for yourself, you will know whether the mind is liberated from suffering. When you see that upadana is the cause for suffering, and then you practice to cut off that cause of suffering, then you can see whether upadana is being cut off, and you can know that for yourself. You don't have to believe somebody else. You can see for yourself that craving and clinging has been destroyed and brought to an end. And through that, yes, maybe some insights and knowledges of other beings and other planets and other realms can arise. We may see or know devas, may see or know other spirits and other beings. But that's not important. The importance is to know whether we've overcome upadana, whether we've overcome clinging and craving. And when the body breaks up, that mind goes on according to its karma. The mind leads to further rebirth according to its karma. And so when the body breaks up, if there's clinging and craving, then that leads to the perpetuation of further becoming. So this we see leads to vipaka, the results of karma that we've done in the past. Now what we need to do is look with the scientific method or with the Buddhist method on cause and effect, so that we bring an end of all craving, and that will destroy all fear and worry. when you're in a community and you see that something in the community or something in the group is not right or not correct or not appropriate, then we have to look firstly at our own minds. We have to look firstly at our own chittas and see whether our mind is steady and even and normal, is unperturbed by that. If we notice that our mind is stirred up, we are upset or angry or disturbed, then we shouldn't speak at that time. If we're not happy with the other person, then we should be very careful not to speak, because if we do speak, we'll speak with emotion that is tainted, and emotion which is, when the listener hears it, the receiver will hear it in a way which makes it aware to them that you are angry and upset, and it will not go down well, and they will not be able to receive the advice that you want them to hear. So if we notice that we're upset, what we should do is firstly work on our own minds, make our mind peaceful, and make our minds serene. If our mind is peaceful and happy in that, then we should maybe then at an appropriate time and place ask for the opportunity to speak, and ask permission, ask permission to get their permission to give admonition. But we need to be very aware to look at our own feelings and look at our own reaction. If our reaction is one of negativity and anger and being upset of someone doing something that we don't like, then we need to contemplate and investigate to overcome that feeling of dislike and dishappiness, and see that, when the eye sees something, then it is just physical form. Contemplate when the ear hears something unpleasant, it's just sound. Or we may investigate that it's not a person, it's not a being, it's not self that is doing this. So investigate that there's no one there, there's no being. So we're contemplating not self, we're contemplating the idea of anatta, so that what we're doing is then overcoming the negativity in our mind. And when our chitta is cool and serene, then it may be an appropriate time that we can say something then, but only after our mind is peaceful and serene. Because we have to be very careful when saying something in a community, or even looking at people with negativity, because if we have a lot of aversion in the mind and we're looking at our fellow companions with aversion, then it may become that we cannot even look at each other for the whole pansa, and because there's something happened and we've said something wrong and there's a negativity, and that affects our mind when we go away to meditate. It affects our meditation, it affects other people's meditation, and can destroy the meditation for the whole pansa because of that's wrong words or ill advice or spoken at the wrong time. So we have to be very careful to make our minds very peaceful and serene. When we're in a community, there may be some people who are very diligent and energetic and on time and put a lot of effort and energy into doing service to the community and keeping the ko wat and doing the activities and arriving on time. And then another person may be not arriving on time, maybe be seen by ourselves as slacking and not helping out. But just supposing that person is sick, so the energetic person who's doing everything and putting a lot of effort and energy into the community activities may look down and criticize and find fault with that person who's not turning up, but not be aware that they're actually sick. And because of that, when we look down and find fault with them, then it leads to problems and conflict, and leads to negativity and being upset. But this can be resolved if we come together and have conversation and ask and discuss and talk about things, so that there's interaction. And when we find out, that the reasons maybe why they haven't turned up is that they're sick and not well, then we may change our view and our opinion, because normally we always think that we're right and the other person is wrong. We always think that we're correct and the other people aren't, and that we don't need to change, other people do. But when we actually sit down and discuss things and communicate, in a skillful way and find out their reasons, try to see things from their point of view, we might find that actually we might change our views and change our opinions and start to see them in a different way. And so we might give up our aversion and give up our viewpoint and try and see their point of view and see where they're coming from. And so we have to be very careful with finding fault with others. We have to be very careful with living in a community, that we're practicing and investigating our own mind and not getting attached to our own feelings and perceptions and attaching too strongly to those.
Being receive the merit that I share with them. And I'd just like to ask, firstly, do other beings receive the merit that we share to other beings? And also, I'd like to ask if doubt arises in your mind regarding this, is this an obstacle? It's a serious obstacle. You have doubt around sharing the merits, doubt around sharing of the merits of being and other realms. If you have doubt regarding that,
When we develop loving kindness meditation, or the state of mind of metta, and the mind, the citta, is peaceful and calm, then we may share the merits, or share the merits of that goodness and that peaceful state and that tranquility and loving kindness to other beings. When we do so, that is meritorious, and that is punya, that is merit. And when we do anything like development of loving kindness, that is the development of what is good and wholesome, what is good and wholesome, and it is also what is meritorious, and that makes the mind, the heart, happy, and it makes the mind full of merit. It makes the mind full of goodness, and that makes, when the mind is full of goodness, then it makes the mind very comfortable and at ease and peaceful and composed. And when we have this happiness arising in the mind, and we have this joy and contentment, this metta in the mind, then that is the development of the Brahma-viharas. Now, when we're developing the Brahma-viharas with this happiness and goodness of the mind, we may then choose to share that with other beings. And when we choose to share that with other beings, we're sharing this very happiness that we have in our own hearts, this goodness that we have in our own hearts with all other beings, so that they can receive this goodness and happiness. And when we do share it with other beings, then that is a manifestation of metta, a manifestation of the Brahma-viharas in action. If we're developing loving kindness and sharing the merits with other beings, and our strength of mind is strong enough, and our heart is powerful, and those other beings are in a state which they can receive that loving kindness, they can receive that goodness, then they will receive it. If our energy and strength of mind is not very good, it is weak and undeveloped, and those beings are in a state where they cannot receive, they're in a state or realm that they cannot receive that's merit, then because of the weakness of our hearts, the weakness of our minds, they will not be able to receive it. Also, they're in a state that they're not open to receiving it. When I was practicing with Ajahn Chah, when he was still alive, I would, when the mind was peaceful and I come out of meditation, I would spread loving kindness and share the merit of my practice with Ajahn Chah and when the mind was peaceful, I would just sit and think about Ajahn Chah and spread loving kindness to him. And then when I'd go over and see him, he would comment and say to the effect, "You don't have to worry about me, worry about yourself." It's almost like he knew that I'd been sharing loving kindness and sharing the merit with him. But because of the strength of his mind and the power of his citta and the purity of his mind, it was like I was being too concerned with him when I really needed to be concerned with myself. And he was aware, he was conscious that I'd been sharing loving kindness and merit with him. And because of his ability to receive that and the purity of his mind, he would comment and point out to me that he'd been aware that I'd been sharing the merit. So if there is a person who can receive it, then they will receive it if they're in a state, and if our mind is strong enough to share the merit. So that's the first aspect of the question. The second aspect of the question is if we have doubt about whether these beings will receive it and whether it will be beneficial for our practice or the effect on our practice, and doubt about that, then see that doubt as just one of the hindrances, that will be a hindrance to peace, that will be a hindrance to the development of wholesome states of mind, that will be a hindrance to the development of metta, that will be a hindrance to the development of peaceful states and samadhi. So see doubt as just doubt, and doubt and confusion just as that. See the arising of doubt and the ceasing of doubt. Contemplate its arising and ceasing. The arising and passing away of doubt is just the arising and passing away of doubt, so that you make your mind peaceful. If your mind is caught in doubt, then it will not be peaceful, it will not be calm. That hindrance will be a great burden. So you need to overcome doubt to overcome the hindrance. So don't have doubt about sharing of merit. It should be cultivated, it should be developed, and see that very doubt as a hindrance to the strength and peace of the mind. The question was that how do you practice when you have feelings of joy and gladness and delight arising, when there's the piti, sukha arising? And Dhanajan responded that happiness and joy one can arise in a particular spot. For example, one may have a feeling of joy arising in the heart region, or even in the area of the nasal. One can be aware of the sense of just rapture and joy arising in the body as a feeling. It may feel cool and comfortable and just very serene and rapturous, with a sense of gladness there. Then if one develops that, then that becomes more solid and more stable and more strong, and there's a very deep sense of bliss and pleasure and happiness that goes together with that joy. And that rapture and joy and happiness, those two qualities of piti sukha, they're the energy for samadhi. That's the force, the power behind samadhi, and the force that leads to samadhi. So one may be developing buddhanussati, recollection of the Buddha and the qualities of the Buddha, or dhammanussati, recollection of the qualities of the teachings, or sankhanussati, recollection of the qualities of the Aryans, as a mindfulness meditation. And that leads to this sense of rapture and joy arising in the mind. So when rapture and joy becomes very strong, then we should be aware that this has arisen, and we should know that sukha, happiness, is just a feeling. It is a feeling. That feeling is anicca, dukkha, anatta, is impermanent, it is unsatisfactory and not self. It is not self, it's something which arises because of a cause and will cease because of a cause. We see its arising, we see its passing away. And when this piti becomes more developed, it may become stronger, it may arise more frequently. In the beginning, when we experience rapture and happiness, that joy is often taken to be self. It is our rapture, our happiness. We see the pleasure as ourselves, as experiencing pleasure. We see the joy as me and mine. But when we develop wisdom and contemplation, then we'll start to see that pleasure is just a pleasurable feeling. It is neither me, mine, or owned by self.